The first human colony burned while Ambassador Kyle Harrison watched from his cell aboard the Vaketh flagship. Through the transparent wall, he saw the orange glow of atmosphere igniting as orbital strikes hammered the surface of New Portland. 300,000 souls lived there. Now they were dying, and the alien council representatives who had ordered the attack stood behind him, discussing trade routes. Kyle's hands didn't shake. They had stopped shaking after the second colony fell. After his pleas for ceasefire had been laughed out of the council chambers. After the Vaketh Empire, the Sorlian Collective, and the Draxian Confederacy had jointly decided that humanity's expansion into what they called their territory required immediate and total response. The council had made one critical mistake. They had left him alive to deliver their message. Commander Lisa Rodriguez received the transmission 6 hours later at Lunar Command. She stood in the operations center surrounded by holographic displays showing the locations of Earth's 62 colonies. 41 were now marked red. Destroyed. The ambassador's face appeared on the main screen, bruised and exhausted. "They want unconditional surrender," Kyle said. "Abandonment of all colonies beyond the Sol system. Dismantling of our military fleet. Tribute payments for the next 2 centuries. He paused, and something cold entered his eyes. "I told them I would deliver their terms. I didn't say we would accept them." Lisa looked at the assembled officers around her. General Paul Carter from the Marine Corps, Admiral Victoria Grant from the Space Navy, Director Christopher Hayes from Colonial Defense. They had spent the last 72 hours watching their people die while the galaxy's 3 most powerful empires coordinated their assault. "Get me the Security Council," Lisa said quietly. All of them, now. Within 20 minutes, every human government representative was online. The Terran Assembly, the Lunar Colonies, the Martian Federation, the Belt Clans, even the distant ice miners from Europa's depths. For the first time in human history, there was no debate, no political maneuvering, no discussion of costs or consequences. The vote was unanimous. Admiral Grant activated the fleet-wide channel. Every human ship, from massive carriers to single-pilot fighters, received the same message simultaneously. The words were simple, but they changed everything. Humanity is at war. Total war. We will not surrender. We will not retreat. We will not negotiate until every world that attacked us understands what it means to strike at Earth's children. Kyle Harrison smiled in his cell as alarms began screaming throughout the Vaketh flagship. The council members turned from the view screen in confusion. Outside, human ships were emerging from faster-than-light jumps. Not dozens. Hundreds. Every reserve vessel, every prototype, every ship that could carry a weapon had been mobilized. The Vaketh captain rushed to the bridge, shouting orders. Kyle could hear the panic in the alien's voice. They had expected humanity to fold. Every species did when faced with overwhelming force. The Council controlled 2/3 of known space. They had fought and won 1,000 wars, but they had never fought humans who had nothing left to lose. The first human ship rammed the flagship's shield generators at full speed. The pilot, a volunteer named Danny Cooper, broadcast a single message before impact. For New Portland. The shields collapsed. Across occupied human space, the pattern repeated. Colonial militia forces that were supposed to be destroyed emerged from hiding. Civilian ships retrofitted with weapons joined the fight. Mining crews used industrial equipment to devastating effect against military vessels designed for conventional warfare. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson it should have understood before firing the first shot. Humans didn't fight wars to win territory or resources or prestige. When humanity went to war, it was personal. And personal wars didn't end with negotiations. They ended when the enemy couldn't fight anymore. Admiral Grant stood on the bridge of the carrier Phoenix as it led the first major counteroffensive. The target was the Sorlian military station at Kessler Point, the staging ground for attacks on human colonies. Intelligence reported over 50,000 Sorlian personnel stationed there, protected by the most advanced defensive systems in their arsenal. "All ships," she said, "begin the assault." The Sorlians had been expecting a cautious approach, probing attacks to test their defenses. Instead, human forces hit them with everything at once. Kinetic missiles traveling at relativistic speed struck first, overwhelming point defense systems through sheer volume. Then came the energy weapons, the plasma torpedoes, the experimental railguns that Earth's scientists had been developing for decades. The station's shields held for 90 seconds. When they failed, the real attack began. Marine drop pods launched from a dozen assault carriers. Inside each pod, soldiers checked their weapons and armor. These weren't regular troops. Every Marine volunteering for the first wave had lost someone in the colony attacks.
They weren't here to take prisoners.
Sergeant Brandon Kelly's pod hit the station's hull and burned through the outer plating. His squad emerged into a corridor filled with Sorlian soldiers. The aliens wore powered armor and carried weapons that could vaporize a human at 200 meters. Brandon's squad didn't give them the chance to use them. Human combat doctrine had changed in the last 72 hours. The rules of engagement that emphasized minimal casualties and proportional response had been burned along with the colonies. Now there was only one rule: win. The Sorlians discovered that humans had been holding back for the entire first contact period. The strength enhancements that human military augmentation could provide, the neural interfaces that let soldiers coordinate with machine precision, the chemical stimulants that turned fear into focused aggression. Brandon's squad moved through the station like a storm. The Sorlians fell back, then retreated, then broke and ran. Within an hour, the military station that was supposed to be impregnable had been captured. The human flag flew from its command center, and Admiral Grant's face appeared on every screen in the facility. "This station is now human territory," she announced. "Any Sorlian personnel who wish to surrender will be treated according to the conventions of war. Any who continue fighting will be eliminated. You have 5 minutes to decide. Most surrendered, some fought. None survived fighting." Back on Earth, Director Hayes coordinated the largest intelligence operation in human history. Every spy, every operative, every agent who had been building networks in alien space for the past 30 years received activation orders. Their mission was simple: find the homeworlds of the 3 empires that had declared war on humanity, map their defenses, identify their critical infrastructure, and wait for the fleet to arrive. The Draxian Confederacy learned about the fall of Kessler Point and immediately scrambled their battle fleet, 70 warships, each 3 times the size of human vessels, equipped with technology that had dominated space combat for centuries. Their admiral, a veteran of 12 major campaigns, looked at the tactical display with satisfaction. The humans had 1 carrier group in the sector. His fleet would crush them and send a message. He never considered that the humans might have learned to use deception. The Phoenix appeared to retreat, drawing the Draxian fleet into pursuit. The admiral ordered full speed, eager to destroy the human flagship. His sensors showed empty space ahead. No mines, no hidden ships, no traps. The sensors were wrong. Human ships had been coated with experimental stealth materials and powered down to minimal signatures. They floated in the void like dead metal, undetectable until the Draxian fleet passed into the kill box. Then they activated. The ambush was perfect. Draxian ships found themselves surrounded, their formations scattered, their tactical advantage gone. Human vessels swarmed them like wolves, taking down larger prey. When the Draxian admiral tried to surrender 2 hours into the battle, Admiral Grant's response was broadcast across all frequencies. "You attacked our homes. You killed our families. You thought we would break." Her voice was cold. "There are no surrenders today, only consequences." The Draxian fleet was annihilated, 70 ships reduced to debris, thousands of crew killed. The Admiral's flagship was the last to fall, torn apart by concentrated fire from every human ship in range. The galaxy watched the battle footage in shock. This wasn't how wars were fought. Civilized species accepted surrenders, negotiated terms, followed protocols that had existed for millennia. Humans were ignoring all of it. The Vaketh Empire called an emergency council session. Representatives from 100 species gathered virtually, their faces showing various degrees of concern and fear. The council leader, a Vaketh named Thelos, addressed the assembly. "The human response has been excessive and barbaric. We must organize a coalition to contain their aggression before it spreads beyond the current conflict zone." "Contain them?" The Zareth ambassador's translator conveyed disbelief. "You started a war with a species you knew nothing about. You destroyed their colonies without warning. What did you expect? We expected them to surrender like any rational species would when faced with superior force. Clearly, humans define rationality differently than you do." The debate continued for hours, but no consensus emerged. Some species wanted to join the coalition against humanity. Others wanted to stay neutral. A few quietly began opening diplomatic channels to Earth, offering support in exchange for future considerations. The galaxy was fracturing, and it had only been 5 days since the war began. Kyle Harrison was released as part of a prisoner exchange. When he returned to Earth, he went directly to the Senate chambers where the Terran Assembly was in continuous session. They offered him medical leave. counseling. Time to recover. He refused all of it. I watched our people burn, he told them. I looked those council members in the eyes while they discussed our extinction like it was a minor trade dispute. I made a promise to myself in that cell. He paused, and every senator felt the weight of his words. I promised that I would see their worlds burn the same way. I intend to keep that promise. The Senate gave him a new position, Special Ambassador for Strategic Retaliation. His job was to coordinate diplomatic pressure with military operations, to ensure that every species in the galaxy understood the cost of attacking humanity. His first act was to deliver a message to the Galactic Council. It was brief. You have taken 41 of our worlds. We will take 41 of yours. You have killed millions of our people. We will kill millions of yours. You declared total war on humanity. We accept. This ends when you can no longer fight, or when you no longer exist. The choice is yours. The Council dismissed it as human bluster. They had resources that dwarfed Earth's industrial capacity. They had technology centuries more advanced. They had allies throughout known space. Humans were one species on one world with scattered colonies. The math was simple. But the Council had forgotten to account for human nature. Admiral Grant launched the second phase of operations. Instead of defending colonies or fighting fleet actions, human forces went on the offensive. Strike groups hit industrial facilities, shipyards, supply depots. They didn't try to hold territory. They destroyed infrastructure and moved on before enemy reinforcements could arrive. The Saurian Collective lost 18 major manufacturing centers in 3 weeks. The Draxian Confederacy saw their primary shipyards reduced to wreckage. The Vaketh Empire discovered that their supply lines stretched across too much space to defend effectively. Human tactics were brutal and efficient. They studied each enemy's logistics, identified critical nodes, and systematically destroyed them. Species that had fought wars of maneuver and grand strategy found themselves facing an opponent who targeted their ability to sustain military operations. Captain Jennifer Morris led one of the most successful strike teams. Her ship, a modified corvette called the Retribution, had destroyed 23 enemy facilities without taking a single casualty. Her secret was simple. She studied her targets obsessively, planned every detail, and executed with precision. When the Saurian government put a bounty on her head, she sent them a message. It contained coordinates for her next target and a timestamp. She was telling them exactly when and where she would strike. They sent 3 battlecruisers to intercept her. She destroyed the target anyway, slipped through their blockade, and left a recording of her ship's signature at the site. The message was clear. Human forces could strike anywhere, any time, and there was nothing the empires could do to stop them. The psychological impact was devastating. Saurian military personnel started requesting transfers away from critical facilities. Draxian shipyard workers went on strike, refusing to build new vessels that would just be destroyed. Vaketh supply convoys required increasingly massive escorts, tying up ships that were needed elsewhere. The 3 empires were learning what total war actually meant. It wasn't about glorious battles or territorial conquest. It was about breaking the enemy's will to fight through relentless, systematic pressure. And humans were very, very good at it. General Carter coordinated the ground campaigns. Human Marines had landed on 12 enemy-held worlds, not to conquer them, but to cause chaos. They sabotaged infrastructure, disrupted communications, and vanished before enemy forces could respond. The empires had to divert enormous resources to counter these raids, resources that couldn't be used to attack human territory. On Draxia Prime, one of the Confederacy's core worlds, a team of 40 Marines led by Lieutenant Sarah Morgan managed to disable the planetary defense grid for 6 hours. They didn't destroy it. They just shut it down long enough for every Draxian on the planet to look up at their sky and realize they were vulnerable. The raid didn't kill anyone. It didn't need to. The message was enough. Back on Earth, scientists worked around the clock developing new weapons and technologies. The war had removed all ethical constraints on military research. Projects that would have taken decades were completed in months. Some innovations were refinements of existing technology. Others were completely new. Dr. Alan Price led a team that developed a virus capable of infecting alien computer systems, not to steal data or cause malfunctions, to deliver a message. Every infected system would display the same text. We can reach you anywhere. Remember what you started. The virus spread through Saurian networks within days. Then it jumped to Draxian systems. Then Vaketh, military and civilian infrastructure alike became vectors for human psychological warfare. The empires tried to contain it, but human hackers were always one step ahead. The galaxy was discovering that humans excelled at asymmetric warfare. Every advantage the empires had was being systematically neutralized through innovation, deception, and sheer determination. 6 weeks into the war, the Sorlian Collective requested a ceasefire. Not a surrender, just a pause to discuss terms. Admiral Grant's response was delivered via the same virus that had infected their networks. No, the war continued.
Human forces pushed deeper into enemy territory. They had captured enough alien ships to reverse engineer key technologies.
Energy shields, faster-than-light drives, advanced sensors. Human engineers integrated these systems with Earth technology, creating hybrid vessels that combined the best of both approaches. The Revenge was the first of these hybrid carriers. It launched with a crew of 2,000, and a fighter complement that included both human-designed craft and captured alien vessels modified for human pilots. Its captain, a veteran named Greg Patterson, had lost his family on New Portland. His first mission was to lead the assault on a Vaketh fortress world called Kethnor.
The planet housed the Empire's military academy and served as a symbol of Vaketh power. It had never been successfully attacked in the Empire's 1,000-year history.
Greg didn't care about history. The assault began with a bombardment that lasted 3 days.
Human ships rotated in and out, maintaining constant pressure on the planetary shields. The Vaketh defenders thought they could outlast the attack.
Their shields had withstood worse. They didn't understand human persistence. On the 4th day, the shields failed. Marine dropships launched immediately, carrying 10,000 soldiers to the surface. The Vaketh Military Academy became a battlefield. Alien cadets who had spent years studying warfare theory found themselves fighting humans who had learned warfare through necessity. It wasn't a fair fight. The academy fell in 18 hours. Greg stood in the commandant's office, looking at centuries of Vaketh military tradition displayed on the walls. Banners from famous victories, weapons from legendary warriors, artifacts from an empire that had never known defeat on its own soil, until now. He ordered everything documented and preserved. Then he had it all shipped to Earth. The Vaketh would get it back when the war ended, if they survived that long.
The fall of Kethnor changed everything.
The Vaketh Empire, the most powerful of the 3 aggressors, had been humiliated on a world they considered untouchable. Their client species started questioning whether the Empire could protect them. Some began secret negotiations with humanity. Ambassador Harrison met with representatives from the Telvan Compact, a small nation that had been absorbed into the Vaketh sphere of influence centuries ago.
The Telvans wanted to know if humans would support their independence movement.
Kyle's answer was carefully calculated. If you rise against the Vaketh, we will provide weapons, training, and intelligence support. We will not provide direct military intervention unless the Vaketh attempt genocide.
Do you accept these terms? The Telvans accepted. Within a week, 3 more species approached Earth with similar offers.
The Empire was fracturing from within, and humans were exploiting every crack. The Draxian Confederacy tried a different approach. They sent assassins to kill human leadership. Special operations teams infiltrated Earth's defenses with one mission: eliminate Admiral Grant, General Carter, Director Hayes, and Ambassador Harrison. The assassins were good. They had training, equipment, and intelligence that should have made the mission possible. They made it past security checkpoints, avoided detection systems, and positioned themselves for the kills. They failed anyway. Human counterintelligence had known about the operation for weeks. Director Hayes had let it proceed to see how far it would go. When the assassins moved into position, they found themselves surrounded by Special Forces operators who had been waiting for them. Some surrendered. Some fought. None escaped. Hayes interrogated them personally. He learned details about Draxian black operations, covert programs, and intelligence networks. Then he used that information to dismantle the Confederacy's entire Special Operations Division. Dozens of deep cover agents were exposed. Secret facilities were raided. Programs that had existed for decades were destroyed overnight. The Draxians lost their capacity for covert action, and they learned that humans were better at intelligence work than any species in the galaxy had realized. The war entered its 3rd month. The 3 empires that had attacked humanity were exhausted. Their economies were struggling under the strain of total mobilization. Their populations were demanding answers about why a war that was supposed to be quick and decisive had turned into a grinding nightmare. Their military forces were demoralized and depleted. Humanity, meanwhile, was just getting started.
Earth's industrial capacity had fully converted to war production. Factories that once built civilian goods now produced weapons, ships, and ammunition at a rate that stunned galactic observers. The human population had accepted rationing, long work hours, and military conscription without significant protest. They remembered the 41 colonies. They remembered the millions who died. They wanted revenge, and they were willing to pay any price to get it. The Galactic Council called another emergency session. This time the topic was how to end the war before humanity destroyed the existing power structure entirely. The council leader Thelos addressed the assembly with unusual humility. We made a mistake. We assumed humans were like other species. We assumed they would respond to overwhelming force with submission. We were wrong. He paused, and his next words carried enormous weight. The question now was how we convince them to stop before we all pay an unacceptable price. The Zereth ambassador, who had opposed the war from the beginning, offered a suggestion. Perhaps you should try apologizing. Apologizing? Thelos sounded shocked. You attacked them without provocation. You killed millions of their people. You refused to accept their surrender offers. An apology seems like the minimum requirement for peace negotiations. The Vaketh Empire does not apologize. Then the Vaketh Empire may not survive. The council adjourned without reaching a decision, but the conversation had shifted. For the first time, the empires were discussing not how to win the war, but how to survive it. Admiral Grant received intelligence that the Vaketh were withdrawing forces from human border regions to defend their core systems. She saw an opportunity. If the empire was retreating, humanity should pursue. She organized the largest human fleet action of the war. 20 carriers, 100 cruisers, 300 support vessels. The target was the Vaketh home system itself. Not to conquer it, but to demonstrate that nowhere was safe. The fleet jumped into Vaketh space and found minimal resistance. The Empire had pulled back most of its forces, leaving only automated defenses. Human ships systematically destroyed military installations, shipyards, and defensive satellites. They avoided civilian targets, but they made sure every Vaketh on the homeworld could see the human fleet in their sky. The message was clear. We can end you whenever we choose. After 6 hours, the fleet withdrew. 0 human casualties. Thousands of military targets destroyed. The psychological impact was exactly what Admiral Grant had intended. The Vaketh Empire collapsed 3 days later. Not militarily, but politically. The council that had ruled for 1,000 years was overthrown in a coup led by moderate factions who wanted peace. The new government's first act was to request formal negotiations with Earth. Ambassador Harrison reviewed their proposal. It included recognition of human sovereignty over all colony worlds, reparations for the attacks, and extradition of the council members who had ordered the colony destructions. It was a complete capitulation, but Kyle wasn't satisfied. We told them we would take 40, one of their worlds, he said to the Terran Assembly. We've taken none. Our promise remains unfulfilled. The Assembly debated for hours. Some argued that accepting the Vaketh surrender would show humanity's capacity for mercy. Others agreed with Kyle that promises made in wartime had to be kept. The compromise was elegant. Humanity would accept the surrender, but the Vaketh would cede administrative control of 41 worlds in their empire to human governance for a period of 50 years. Not permanent conquest, but temporary control that would demonstrate the cost of attacking Earth. The Vaketh agreed. They had no choice. The Sorlian Collective and Draxian Confederacy watched the Vaketh surrender and understood that their time was limited. Both empires sent peace delegations to Earth within days. The negotiations took place in Geneva, with representatives from all 3 empires sitting across from human diplomats. Ambassador Harrison led the human delegation, flanked by military officers and legal experts. The terms were harsh. Recognition of human claims to all disputed territories. Reparations totaling trillions in resources and technology. Public trials for military commanders who had ordered attacks on civilian populations. Restrictions on military buildups near human space for the next century. The empires complained that the terms were too severe. Kyle's response was simple. You chose total war. This is what total defeat looks like. Accept our terms, or we continue until there's nothing left of your governments to negotiate with. They accepted. The Treaty of Geneva was signed on a date that would become a holiday throughout human space. Victory Day, the day humanity proved that attacking Earth's children carried consequences that would echo for generations. But the treaty was just the beginning. The war had changed humanity's position in the galaxy forever. Species that had ignored or dismissed Earth now sought alliances and trade agreements. The Galactic Council, which had never offered humanity a seat, now begged for human participation. Admiral Grant was promoted to Grand Admiral and given command of the new Galactic Security Fleet, a combined human and allied force designed to prevent future wars. General Carter became the head of the Interspecies Military Academy, training the next generation of officers from dozens of worlds. Director Hayes took charge of the Galactic Intelligence Service, ensuring that humanity would never be caught off guard again. Ambassador Harrison remained in his position, now expanded to ambassador to the Galactic Council. His first speech to the Council became famous. "We did not want this war. We sought only to live in peace and expand our civilization into empty space. You chose to attack us. You chose to kill our people. You chose to believe that humanity would break under pressure." He looked at each council member in turn. "You were wrong. Remember that lesson? Remember the cost of your mistake? And understand that if you ever threaten Earth or her children again, there will be no negotiations, no treaties, no mercy. There will only be war. And next time we will not stop until every world that raised arms against us is ashes." The council members sat in silence. They had learned their lesson. The galaxy had realized it had gone too far, right when humans declared war. Now it lived with the consequences of that realization. The three empires that had attacked Earth were shadows of their former power. Dozens of species had gained independence in the chaos. The balance of power had shifted permanently. And humanity, the species that had been dismissed as primitive and weak, now stood as the most feared military force in known space, not because they had the best technology or the largest fleets, but because they had proven something the galaxy had forgotten. Some wars aren't fought for territory or resources. Some wars are fought for survival, for dignity, for the simple right to exist without fear. Those wars don't end with negotiations. They end with victory or extinction. The galaxy had chosen to test humanity's resolve. They had pushed Earth's children to the brink, expecting them to break. Instead, they discovered that humans don't break. They adapt. They endure. They fight back with every tool at their disposal, and some they invent along the way. And when the galaxy finally realized it had gone too far, humanity made sure that realization came with a price that would never be forgotten. The war was over. The peace would last as long as the galaxy remembered what happened when they made humanity angry. Given the scale of the destruction, the humiliation of the empires, and the complete reversal of the galactic power structure, that memory would likely last for centuries. Kyle Harrison stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt space station orbiting New Portland. The colony had been restored, its population slowly returning. Below, he could see the lights of cities being rebuilt, farms being replanted, a civilization coming back to life. Next to him stood Lisa Rodriguez, now promoted to Marshal of the Terran Defense Forces. They watched in silence for a long moment. "Was it worth it?" Lisa asked quietly. Kyle thought about the millions who had died, the resources expended, the years of war, the fundamental changes to human society and galactic civilization. Then he thought about the alternative: surrender, subjugation, the slow death of human independence. "Yes," he said. "They needed to learn that some species can't be conquered. Some peoples will fight to the last breath rather than submit. Humanity needed to prove that we belong among the stars, not as vassals or junior partners, but as equals." He paused. "They learned. The galaxy learned. And our children will live in a universe where no one questions our right to exist." Lisa nodded. "The price of peace is eternal vigilance, and the willingness to fight when vigilance fails," Kyle added. "We'll never forget that again." Below them, New Portland's lights continued to spread across the darkness, each one a small act of defiance against those who had tried to extinguish them. Humanity had been tested in fire and emerged stronger. The galaxy had realized its mistake too late to avoid the consequences. And in command centers, academies, and government halls throughout human space, a new generation prepared to ensure that the lesson remained learned. The war was over, but humanity's watch had just begun.